Namaste. Aloha. Welcome to the Bhagavad Gita as it is class. My name is Janapati Das. Please accept my respects, everyone. Let me take this opportunity to praise and glorify my spiritual master, Jagat Guru Siddha Swarupananda Paramhamsa Srila Prabhupada, and offering obeisances to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are continuing with Chapter 8 of the Bhagavad Gita. Welcome, and let us start off with some hearing and chanting of Krishna's names. This is what the center practice of our meditation, so please join along. Swarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Korakana Swarupaya Radha Krishna Krishtayate Namosira Swarupanda Paramahamsa Namine Korakana Swarupaya Radha Krishna Krishtayate Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I was born in the darkness, ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto. Okay, we are continuing on chapter 8, Attaining the Supreme. I just want to I'm going to read the questions that Arjuna asked again. And we had stressed this point that this is how we receive Vedic knowledge in this process, by inquiring submissively to our spiritual master the questions that are concerning us, the questions we have about the absolute truth. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. How does this Lord of Sacrifice live in the body? And in which part does he live, O Madhusudan? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? So, very good questions, and we had answered some of these, or Krishna had answered some of these previously. So we are continuing with text 8. Abhyasya yoga yuktena chetasya ninanya gamina paramam purusham divam yati parthanuchintayan. Abhyasya, practice. Yoga yuktena, being engaged in meditation. Chetasya, by the mind and intelligence. Na anyagamina, without being deviated. Paramam, the supreme. Purusham, personality of Godhead. Divyam, transcendental. Yati, achieves. Partha, usanaprita. Anuchintayan, constantly thinking of. Translation, text 8. He who meditates on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path. He, O Partha, Arjuna, is sure to reach me. So, meditation, of course, is referred in this word yoga yuktena. Yukta. Yukta yuktena. So one is the actual being connected to Krishna, and one is the activity of being connected in meditation. So being engaged in meditation. So the mind is constantly engaged in mind and intelligence. Chetasya, by the mind and intelligence. So utilizing the mind, and so instead of allowing the mind to be the best friend and not the worst enemy, by utilizing the mind in the service of Krishna instead of in the process of trying to find our own pleasure and happiness for ourselves. In this verse, Lord Krishna stresses the importance of remembering him. So we heard that word smaranam. Smaranam, I think it was with the word smaranam, kirtanam, shravanam, kirtanam, smaranam. So there are some different processes of devotional service. So there is hearing. So we hear the chanting, we hear the words of our spiritual master, we hear the scripture. We have to really listen to be able to hear. And Also, if you don't hear, you won't listen. You won't listen. If you're not listening, you won't also hear. So I recently listened to a lecture of my spiritual master, the importance of chanting, but also hearing from your spiritual master. You should really actively engage your mind, just like it said in here. Meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind is constantly engaged in remembering me. So the mind and the intelligence in the process of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, is the hearing, the repeating, the remembering. So these are all in the process of sadhana bhakti that we should actively engage in. In this verse, Lord Krishna stresses the importance of remembering him. One's memory of Krishna is revived by chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna. By this practice of chanting and hearing the sound vibration of the Supreme Lord, one's ear, tongue, and mind are engaged. This is the process of the practice of Bhakti Yoga. So we're instructed to utilize our senses, our mind, our intelligence in the service of Krishna in the process of meditation. Instead of, the things that we normally want to do, we want to remember the things that we watched on Netflix or things, gossip that people talk about, the news, whatever is happening and politically. You can go on your social media and people are remembering events that happen consistently through the material world, and they talk about it and they spin it and they try to solve this, because of their desire to control and their desire to be Lord, basically, to have their will be done, right? They try to use their mind in repeating things, angles of political things. They hear about more things that people are talking about, their own spinning. They react to those kind of things. This is all really unnecessary. This is really, one should be using the ears to hear Krishna or hear the devotee of Krishna talk about real life, spiritual life. The tongue to chant, the mind to engage in it. This mystic meditation is very easy to practice, and it helps one attain the Supreme Lord. In this age of Kali Yuga, it's very difficult for people to focus on things. So the process, as Krishna is relating to Arjuna, because Arjuna wanted to do the yogi trip of meditating on in Krishna explains all these kinds of meditations that you can do, that yogis used to do, of meditating on the tip of their nose and controlling their life air. People can't even do that now. They can barely function. They are so agitated and aggravated. I mean, it's like this example of people protesting on the street, or getting so angry at federal agents, or just aggressively attacking other people because of their different political views. That this is a mind out of control, because they've utilized their senses, their the practices of what they're chanting about, what they're speaking, and what they're hearing, and what they're seeing, in the process of things that just further aggravate the senses and the mind. So, whereas when we engage in Krishna service, this is a calming salve. It actually gives us real attraction. It doesn't agitate us. This mystic, it's very easy to practice and helps one attain the Supreme Lord. Purusham means enjoyer. Although living entities belong to the marginal energy of the Supreme Lord, they are in material contamination. They think themselves enjoyers, but they are not the supreme enjoyer. So it's not very enjoyable what people are engaging in right now. They're actually very stressed out. They're very aggravated. They're very agitated. They can't think straight because they're so agitated by the things that they engage their minds in, politically and whatnot. but it really is a desire to own and control something. So there is a desire. When contemplating that objects of the senses, one becomes attached to them. For example, we have the shooting that happened, right? Everybody's mad at ICE agents and whatnot. And so it is spurned on by what they're watching in the media. And they just get these ideas in their head. So they're contemplating the objects of their senses, and they are becoming more and more attached to it. And it's very difficult. I mean, even when I've kind of looked at some of the feeds, they have such wide, opposing views of, and both sides are very agitated about what really happened and what was right and what's not. So people are becoming attached to their side or whatever, and they're thinking, this person, these other people are crazy or they're loons or whatever, and so this is just spurned on. When they contemplate the objects of the senses, one develops attachment. From attachment becomes lust. They want to resolve this. They want to do something about this kind of agitation that's going on, and they get angry, so angry. It's like, even just I've had conversations with people, not even really conversations, it just comes up, they start spilling it out, and I just leave it, because even if you say anything, it's like they're agitated already. From anger becomes bewilderment of memory, and unfortunate situations where people attack other people. So that's just an example of that. Here it is clearly stated that the Supreme Enjoyer is the Supreme Personality of Godhead in its different manifestations and plenary expansions as Narayan, Vasudeva, etc. The devotees can constantly think of the object of worship, the Supreme Lord, in any of his features, Narayan, Krishna, Rama, etc., by chanting Hare Krishna. So we chant Hare Krishna, which is really the true solve. It's the thing that we're really desiring for. This practice will purify him, and at the end of his life, due to his constant chanting, he will be transferred to the kingdom of God. Yoga practices meditation on the supersoul within. Similarly, by chanting Hare Krishna, one fixes his mind always on the Supreme Lord. The mind is fickle, and therefore it is necessary to engage the mind by force to think of Krishna. One example often is given is that of a caterpillar that thinks of becoming a butterfly and so is transformed into a butterfly in the same life. Similarly, if we constantly think of Krishna, it is certain that at the end of our lives we shall have the same bodily constitution as Krishna. Text 9. Kavim Puranam Anushashritaram Anyoraniyam Sham Anushmaredyaha Sarvasya Dartaram Achinta Rupam Aditya Dvarnam Tamasha Parashtat. Kavim, one who knows everything. Puranam, the oldest. Anushashritam, Anushashitaram, the controller, Anoho, of the atom, Aniyamsha, smaller than, Anushmaret, always thinking, Ya, one who, Sarvasha, of everything, Dataram, maintainer, Achinta, inconceivable, Rupam, form, Adita Varnam, illuminated like the sun, Tamasha, of the darkness, Parashtat, transcendental. One should meditate upon the Supreme Person as one who knows everything, as he who is the oldest, who is the controller, who is smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond the material conception, who is inconceivable, and who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and being transcendental is beyond this material nature. Luminous like the sun. Such beautiful. So this harkens to like the Sri Ishopanishad that says God walks but does not walk. So Krishna encompasses all things. personal and impersonal. The process of thinking of the Supreme is mentioned in this verse. The foremost point is that he is not impersonal or void. One cannot meditate on something impersonal or void. So yeah, it's meditating on something that has no form. How do you meditate on something that has no form? That is very difficult. The process of thinking, however, is very easy and is factually stated herein. First of all, he is Purusha, spiritual, Rama and Krishna, and is described herein as Kavim, that is, he knows past, present, and future, and therefore knows everything. He is the oldest personality because he is the origin of everything. Everything is born out of him. He is also the supreme controller of the universe, maintainer and instructor of humanity. He is smaller than the smallest. The living entity is only 10,000th part of the tip of a hair, but the Lord is so inconceivably small that he enters into the heart of this particle. Therefore, he is called smaller than the smallest. As the Supreme, he can enter into the atom and into the heart of the smallest and control him as the supersoul. Although so small, he is still all-pervading and is maintaining everything. By him, all these planetary systems are sustained. We often wonder how these big planets are floating in the air. It is stated here that the Supreme Lord, by his inconceivable energy, is sustaining all these big planets and systems of galaxies. So yeah, the nature of the universe is so amazing to think that it just somehow, all these planets and galaxies and all the gravitational poles are perfectly aligned. The Earth is perfectly in a location where it sustains life. It's like that could not possibly have just happened by itself. The word achintya, inconceivable, is very significant in this connection. God's energy is beyond our conception, beyond our thinking jurisdiction, and is therefore called inconceivable, achinta. Who can argue this point? He pervades this material world and yet is beyond it. We cannot even comprehend this material world, which is insignificant compared to the spiritual world. So how can we comprehend what is beyond? It's true. It's like we think we have a grasp on the nature of and the mysteries. Just, you solve one mystery and it opens up all these doors to all these just really strange and abnormal weirdnesses about the universe. They have they get these kind of more powerful telescopes. So they started with the Hubble telescope, which took pictures a certain way, but then they just created a new telescope that's a Webb telescope or something, and it just took even more, and it was like kind of threw out a lot of theories that people had built up on. They were building their theories and their discussions on their theories. This is the thing about science, is the empirical sciences, that they have a theory, like evolution. They have a theory, and they build, and everybody writes stuff as if those things are facts. But then they discover something else, and they throw out 95% of the previous scientists' theories and writings. They're like, well, we find that that's actually not true anymore, because we've taken this picture of the universe that it just doesn't make any sense. So this is the point that Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is here. The galaxy is one of innumerable galaxies. Some galaxies that are many galaxies that are full of many more dimensions, and this is a relatively small universe that we live in, and yet it's so inconceivably humongous. We can't even, just our Milky Way, which is one of trillions of galaxies out there, is one of the smallest galaxies, but yet it takes, millions of light years to get across it. And we're just in this little thing called the Milky Way that's really small, and we're just, and we're like, who can comprehend such a thing of the universe, but let alone to comprehend the Supreme Lord? We can't figure out the Lord. We can't figure it out. So therefore, we just deny his existence. Achinta means that which is beyond the material world, right? So the achinta is Krishna is achinta, that which our argument, logic, and philosophical speculation cannot touch, that which is inconceivable. So we try to spin, we try to climb up the absolute truth, but we can't even get up the slippery hills of it, slippery slopes of it with our speculations, no matter how great we can speculate and spin things. Therefore, intelligent persons avoiding useless arguments and speculations should accept what is stated in scriptures like Vedas, Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam and follow the principles they set down. So the real intelligent person is the person that surrenders to Krishna and surrenders their life and receives the knowledge descending from, in their humble state, descending from their spiritual master, descending down from Krishna and Lord Chaitanya. This will lead one to understanding. So let me read that. Therefore, intelligent persons avoiding useless arguments and speculations should accept what is stated in scriptures like the Vedas, Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam and follow the principles they set down. This will lead one to understanding. So we accept these scriptures like the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. They are consistently revealing. We can read through the lines, due to our surrender. We can read something and say, wow, for 20 years I've been reading that and I just realized something about that. Text 10. Prayana kale manasha chalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva bruvor Majje pranamavesha shamyak satam param purusham napaiti divyam prayane kale at the time of death, manasha by the mind, achalena without being deviated, bhaktya in full devotion, yuktaha engaged, yoga balena by the power of mystic yoga, cha also, eva certainly, Bruvoho between the two eyebrows, Majje in, Pranam the life air, Aveshya establishing, Samyak completely, Saha he, Tam that, Param transcendental, Purusham personality of Godhead, Apaiti achieves, Divyam in the spiritual kingdom. One who at the time of death fixes his life air between the eyebrows and in full devotion engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this verse, it is clearly stated that at the time of death, the mind must be fixed in devotion on the Supreme Godhead. For those that practiced in yoga, it is recommended that they raise the life force between the eyebrows. But for a pure devotee who does not practice such yoga, the mind should always be engaged in Krishna consciousness, so that at death he can remember the Supreme by his grace. This is explained in verse 14, which we will get to. I don't know if I need to read it right now. If one who remembers with me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Prita, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. So Krishna's stating what he stated before, the previous types of yoga practice that people used to practice. In the age of Kali, just like I've been stating in this class, people can't even control their minds. They're so completely lazy and full of anger and full of frustration and stupid that they need a very easy practice, which is why Lord Chaitanya came in this age to give us a simple practice of hearing and chanting Krishna's names, kirtan, the chanting of Krishna's names to help people remember Krishna. So the idea of raising our life air, focusing on the tip of our nose or focusing between the point in our eyes, he's stating, Bhaktivedanta is stating it because that was the practice before, but he says here, but the pure devotee who does not practice such yoga, the mind should always be engaged in Krishna consciousness so that at death, he can remember the Supreme by his grace. So we are given the practice of japa, which we practice every day. We are given the practice of kirtan, of goranga breathing, of studying the scriptures, of offering food, stuff to Krishna, to remembering Krishna. It's this smaranam, trying to remember, to activate our Krishna consciousness in our life. We don't need to go and sit and meditate and try to raise our left air. It's unnecessary in this age, because our mind is so disturbed. We need a very simple process, and that process is very powerful. That is the remembering of the mantras, mantra meditation, or remembering of Krishna through the chanting of his names. The particular use of this word but yoga balena is significant in this verse, because without the practice of yoga, one cannot come to this transcendental state of being at the time of death. One cannot suddenly remember the Supreme Lord of Death because he is practiced in some yoga system, especially the system of Bhakti Yoga. Since one's mind at death is very disturbed, one should practice transcendence through yoga during one's life. So this is what we're stating, is that this is a cultivation. Just like you practice music in your life and become a great musician, it doesn't all just come one time. You need to practice it. You have to consistently remember Krishna, because we are conditioned over millions of lifetimes to not remember Krishna. And so now we're trying, in some ways it's very challenging, because our mind, it gives us so much trouble. But we can be consistent and practice it, and at the time of death, we will be practiced in that, and we will remember Krishna at the time of our death, or Krishna will remember us. That is the love chant towards Krishna. Krishna will remember us. Krishna will help us. Let's see, text 11. Yad aksharam vedavido vadanti vishanti adyatayo vitaragaha yadichato brahmacharyam charanti tated padam sangrahena pravakshe. Yat, that which, aksharam, inexhaustible, veda vijaha, a person who is conversant with the Vedas, vadanti, say, vishanti, enters, yat, in which, yatayaha, great sages, vitaragaha, in the renounced order of life, yat, that which, ichantaha, desiring, brahmacharyam, celibacy, charanti, practices, tat, that, te, unto, padam, situation, shangalena, in summary, pravakshai, I shall explain. Text 11, translation. Persons learned in the Vedas who utter Omkara and who are great sages in the renounced order enter into Brahman. During such perfection one practices celibacy. I shall now explain to you this process by which one may attain salvation. Lord Krishna explains that Brahman, although one without a second, has a different manifestations and features. For the impersonalist, the syllable Om is identical with Brahman. Krishna here explains the impersonal Brahman, in which the renounced order of sages enter. In the Vedic system of knowledge, students from the very beginning are taught to vibrate Om and learn of the ultimate impersonal Brahman by living with the spiritual master in complete celibacy. In this way, they realize too of Brahman's feature. This practice is very essential for the student's advancement in spiritual life. But at the moment, such brahmachari, unmarried celibate, life is not at all possible. So it actually stated that, ideally, a person will remain a brahmachari their whole life, but understanding this day and age, it's very difficult for people to be celibate their whole life. So therefore, they are given the opportunity to engage in householder life and have sex life and have children and raise a family and whatnot. The social construction of the world has changed so much that there is no possibility of one's practicing celibacy from the beginning of student life. In fact, it's very difficult in this age of Kali. You know, they have the Christian Catholicism, right? The priest is required to be a celibate monk, pretty much, and that we've seen that's actually extremely difficult for men to do. That they usually break it, or they just end up having sex with boys, and it's just crazy. It's just they can't control their sexual urges. So ideally, I believe that you know, if you can't do it, they should give the option to priests to have families, to have wives. Because there's been so much pedophilia with the Catholic Church because of this. The social construction of the world has changed so much that there is no possibility of one's practicing celibacy from the beginning of student life. Throughout the world, there are many institutions for different departments of knowledge, but there is no recognized institution where students can be educated in the brahmachari principles. So sometimes there have been ashrams. I was in an ashram, but it was a little bit different because I was an adult male who had not been married, but you learn the principles, you study from the disciple or the guru about brahmachari principles, read scriptures, listen to lectures from the guru, chant a lot, practice, japa and service in the service of the guru. Unless one practices celibacy, advancement in spiritual life is very difficult. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya has announced, according to the scriptural injunctions for this age of Kali, that no process of realizing the Supreme is possible except chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So there again, Lord Chaitanya came, Krishna came as Lord Chaitanya to spread the holy names as the main sacrifice, a yajna in this day and age. So other forms of sacrifice and the varnashram system is not quite the same as it used to be. And this is all that's necessary. Text 12. Shavadvarlani shamyamya manohridi nirudyacha murdinadya yatmana pranam ashtito yoga dalanam Shavadvarlani, all the doors of the body. Shamyaya, controlling. Mana, mind. Hridi, in the heart. Nirudya, confined. Cha, also. Murdini, on the head. Adaya, fixed. Atmana, soul. Pranam, the life air. Ashtitaha, situated. Yoga Dharanam, the yogic situation. Translation, text 12. The yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagements, closing the doors of the senses and fixing the mind on the heart and the life air at the top of the head. One establishes himself in yoga. Purport: to practice yoga, as suggested here, one first has to close the door of all sense enjoyment. So this is pratyahara, right? We were talking about the Ashtanga systems, yama niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyahara, dhyan, so all those things, right? So here it said, this practice is called pratyahara, or withdrawing the senses from the sense objects. So it was one of the steps in the process after you've been practicing breathing practices, you following the regulations of yama niyama, the do's and don'ts, kind of philosophical, moral codes. You practice your breathing, and then you start to withdraw, like the turtle draws, it says in the Bhagavad Gita, the turtle withdraws its legs into the tortoise shell, right? So we withdraw the senses into the heart. So this practice is called pratyahara, or withdrawing the senses from the sense objects. Sense organs for acquiring knowledge, such as the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and touch, should be fully controlled and not be allowed to to engage in self-gratification. So this was a lot of why people would sit and they would focus, and they would focus inward, right? Which is very, very difficult to do nowadays. So we are actually given a very simple process of engaging the senses in Krishna consciousness. So we look at pictures of Krishna, we look at the deity, we chant Krishna's names, we don't speak nonsense, we use our ears to hear chant Krishna's names, we eat prasadam with our tongue, we touch the beads that we are chanting, we have a guitar that we are chanting and we're holding it, so many different things, right, that we re-engage our senses in the focusing on Krishna. In this way, the mind focuses on the supersoul in the heart and the life force raised to the top of the head. In the 6th chapter, this process is described in detail, but as mentioned before, this practice is not practical in this age. So Bhaktivedanta keeps coming back. Krishna is laying out to Arjuna all these processes of things, and he ultimately will conclude with just abandon all those and just surrender to Krishna. So he's saying it, but Bhaktivedanta is reiterating, because it's easy to be reading these things and saying, oh, well, you can do all these kind of things, and you can go off and do all these kind of things, and without really realizing that in the end game, he's basically dismissing all that and saying that just surrender to Krishna. It's not really practical in this age. That's what Bhaktivedanta Swami is saying. One just needs to turn on the TV news and watch how people react to things to know that we have no control over our mind. We need a practice that we can engage, that will calm our mind and will calm our heart, give us peace and not agitate us. The best process is Krishna consciousness. If one is always able to fix his mind on Krishna in devotional service, it is very easy for him to remain in an undisturbed transcendental trance or in samadhi. So that is, if one becomes undeviated, because their attraction for Krishna is so much greater than anything else that people try to focus their mind on. It just seems like a big waste of time when you're chanting Krishna's names. All you want to do is chant Krishna's names. You want to look at pictures of Krishna. You want to remember Krishna. You want to think about Krishna. You want to teach people about Krishna and talk about Krishna. It's wonderful. Text 13. Omiti ekaksharam brahma viyan haran mam anushmaran maran ya prayati tiyajan deham sayati paramam gatim. Om, the combination of letters, Omkara. Iti, thus. Eka, aksharam, supreme, indestructible. Brahma, absolute. Viyaharan, vibrating. Mam, me, Krishna. Anushmaran, remembering. Yaha, anyone. Prayati, leaves. Tayajan, quitting. Deham, this body. Saha, he. Yati, achieves. Paramam, supreme. Gati, destination. Translation, text 13. After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and quits his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual planet. So, as we've already talked about, pranava, the Omkara, the sacred sound of Om, is a spiritual representation of Sri Krishna. So it is non-different than Krishna, which is why we always will chant Om Hari Om, because it's oftentimes thought by impersonalists as just being the impersonal sound of just impersonalism. It is God, but it is this one sound that is just differentiated sound, right? But we understand that from a sound is usually made by a person, and that comes from Krishna's body. That is the sound coming off of Krishna's body. So when we think about the sound, we are thinking of Krishna. That's why we say Om Hari Om, because we recognize that Krishna, the Omkara is a spiritual sound vibration of Krishna. It is clearly stated that Om, Brahman, and Lord Krishna are not different. The impersonal sound of Krishna is Om, but the sound Hare Krishna contains Om, which is what we say, right? Om Hari Om, right? It is clearly recommended in this age that if one quits his body at the end of this life chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, he will reach the spiritual planets. Similarly, those who are devotees of Krishna enter the Krishna planet or Goloka Vrindavan, whereas impersonalists remained in the Brahma Jyoti. The personalists also enter many innumerable planets in the spiritual sky known as Vaikunthas. I think we can read one more, text 14. Ananya chetaha tatam yomam smarati nityashaha tashyaham sulabaha partha nitya yuktasya yoginaha ananya chetaha without deviation, satatam always, ya anyone, mam me Krishna, smarati remembers, nityashaha regularly, tasha to him, aham I am, sulabaha very easy to achieve, partha osanaprita nitya regularly, yuktasya engaged, yoginaha of the devotee. Translation, text 14. For one who remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Prita, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. Another wonderful, wonderful verse that basically encapsulates the meaning of the Bhagavad Gita. For one who remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Prita, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. When you are devoted to someone you love, you just want to remember them all the time. So that's just normal. And this is what the meaning of Krishna consciousness. Purport, in this verse, the Bhakti Yoga of the unalloyed devotees of the Supreme Godhead is described. The preceding verses mention 4 kinds of devotees: the distressed, the inquisitive, those who seek material gain, and the speculative philosophers. Different processes of liberation from material entanglement have also been described: karma yoga, gnana yoga, and hatha yoga. But here, bhakti yoga without any mixture of these is mentioned. In bhakti yoga, the devotees desire nothing but Krishna. So we've been talking a lot about the mixed desires, that the devotion that's mixed with desires. There are many people who are devotees of God, supposedly, or followers of God, and they have a desire to obtain heavenly planets, to go to heaven. So they do good things, they do meritorious activities so that they can go enjoy further on. But the devotee, the pure devotee of God, doesn't want anything but Krishna, or service to Krishna. The pure bhakti devotee does not desire promotion to heavenly planets, nor does he seek salvation or liberation from material entanglement. So when we get the, brother, are you saved? Jesus saved you? You know, it's the same thing. It's like the devotee of God is not interested in the salvation of himself. He's interested in anything that he can do to give his love to God, and through devotion and through service. So bhakti yoga is the ends and the means. A pure devotee does not desire anything. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the pure devotee is called Nishkama, which means he has no desire for self-interest. Nishkama. No, because kama is the desire, but this one has no desire. No desire for self-interest. So it doesn't matter what you will, you can, as Lord Chaitanya says in the prayer, you can embrace me or you can kick me away, you will always be my worshipful Lord. I have no desire for anything for me other than to be in the service of you. Perfect peace belongs to him alone, not to them who strive for personal gain. And that is what this material world is about. Even if you're a righteous, religious person, but you have a desire to go to heaven and not go to hell. You have a desire to live a good life, or to, be pious and go to church and be a good person in the community and whatnot, and be respected for being a good person. It's better than being a complete selfish asshole, of course, but it's still tinged with the desire for self-interest or for enjoyment. The pure devotee only wants to please the Supreme Lord. So you only want to please Krishna and your spiritual master. And the most pleasing thing to do for the pure devotee, for your spiritual master, is to chant Krishna's names, is to love Krishna. That's what and Krishna wants you to love the devotee. So it's like, Krishna wants you to love him too. And so that the Lord said that for anyone who is unflinchingly devoted to him, he is easy to attain. The devotee can render service to any of the transcendental forms of the Supreme Lord, and he meets with none of the problems that plague the practitioners of other yogas. Bhakti yoga is very simple and pure and easy to perform. One can begin by simply chanting Hare Krishna. Krishna is very merciful to those who engage in his service, and he helps in various ways that devotee who is fully surrendered to him. And he helps in various ways that devotee who is fully surrendered to him, so he can understand him as he is. The Lord gives such a devotee sufficient intelligence so that ultimately the devotee can attain him in his spiritual kingdom. The special qualification of the pure devotee is that he is always thinking of Krishna without considering the time or place. There should be no impediments. He should be able to carry out his service anywhere and at any time. Some say that the devotee should remain in holy places like Vrindavan or some holy town where the Lord lived, but a pure devotee can live anywhere and create the atmosphere of Vrindavan by his devotional service. So yes, there's a lot of scriptural saying that one should dwell in Vrindavan or holy places, but actually wherever the devotee of Krishna is, wherever your practice of serving your spiritual master, there is Vrindavan. It was Advaita who told Lord Chaitanya, wherever you are, O Lord, there is Vrindavan. A pure devotee constantly remembers Krishna and meditates upon him. These are qualifications of the pure devotee for whom the Lord is most easily attainable. Bhakti yoga is the system that the Gita recommends above all others. Generally, the bhakti yogis are engaged in 5 different ways. 1. Shanta Bhakta, engaged in devotional service and neutrality. 2. Dasya Bhakta, engaged in devotional service as servant. So Lord Jesus Christ was a Dasya Bhakta. Number 3. Shakya Bhakta, engaged as friend. Number 4. Vatshalya Bhakta, engaged as parent. And number 5. Madhura Bhakta, engaged as conjugal lover of the Supreme Lord. In any of these ways, the pure devotee is always constantly engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord and cannot forget the Supreme Lord, and so for him the Lord is easily attained. A pure devotee cannot forget the Supreme Lord for a moment, and similarly, the Supreme Lord cannot forget his pure devotee for a moment. This is the great blessing of the Krishna conscious process of chanting the Maha Mantra Hare Krishna. So we will stop there. We'll start up at text 15 next time. Thank you very much. Namaste.